Sit back, relax, and get ready to enjoy another awesome video by Capt Frank Lanier. Please subscribe, like, and share with all your friends and all the people you hate too. Hi, I'm Capt Frank Lanier, a retired Coast Guard officer and SAMS Accredited Marine Surveyor with over 40 years of experience in the maritime and diving industry. I've amassed literally thousands of photos of all the bad things I've found on boats during my career as a Marine Surveyor. So what we're going to do today is take a look at some of my favorites. We're going to take a look at each picture. We're going to discuss why they're evil, and we're going to discuss what you need to do to correct them. So hop in, buckle up, keep your arms and legs inside the car at all times as we take a carnival-like ride tour through the cavalcade of owner-induced perversions that I like to call Captain Frank's Sea Chest of Horror. Sea Chest of Horror. The owner of this vessel decided a diesel heater was just a ticket for those cold winter days, but what to do about a fuel supply? While utilizing the boat's primary fuel tank seemed a reasonable option, a simpler solution, or so his logic went, was just to recycle a used plastic jug and create a separate but in no way equal mini fuel tank. Drill a small hole in the jug cap, insert the heater fuel supply line, zip tie it all together, and voila! It goes without saying, although this photo proves it has to be said anyway, an impromptu fuel tank installation such as this does not meet any installation or safety standard known to man, and it is not the proper option that should be used. So I see this kind of stuff all the time. This is a portable gas generator that the owner has, he's installed it, quasi-installed it in his boat. You know, it's summer, it's 100 degrees, it's Africa hot outside, and Ethel, she wants that air conditioner going. We're away from the dock, and it's hot. You know, what's a man going to do? Well, he can't afford a permanently installed marine generator. These things you can buy down at the big buck store for, probably a quarter of the price of a real marine generator. So the economic driver is pretty high here, but that doesn't mean that it's safe or what you should do. There's a number of regulations that apply to permanently installed gasoline engines on boats, particularly with regards to stuff like fuel systems, electrical systems, and ventilation. The permanently installed generators and gasoline engines in general have to meet these to be safe. A portable generator like this meets none of them. They're rarely, if ever, ignition protected, meaning they can produce a spark that, if gasoline fumes are present, could ignite the fumes and cause an explosion of biblical proportions. Another issue would be the fuel system on a portable generator. It doesn't meet the requirements for hoses and fuel fittings that a permanently installed generator must meet. This situation creates a real potential for fire should a leak develop. Also, if there was a fire from another source, hoses and fittings for a portable generator don't meet the burn time requirements. That's resistance to failure during a fire that a permanently installed generator, the components for that fuel system must meet. And don't get me started about the potential hazards of filling a hot portable generator on board. As bad as all these are, the worst issue from a safety standpoint, in my view, is the problem with exhaust and carbon monoxide poisoning. Deaths occur due to this every year, even with the permanently installed generators, due to lack of maintenance or improper use. The chances of this are 100 times worse with a portable generator. I've seen boat owners install portable units at every location you can imagine, trying to justify that it's safe. At the bow, at the stern, the cockpit. I even had one dude install it in the forward cabin of his trawler. We just opened the hatch a crack to get that fresh air in here. No matter where you place them on board, the potential for exhaust to find its way into the vessel exists. The best life-saving advice I can offer is just don't use them. So what we're looking at here, the issue is, if you look at the prop and you look at the propeller shaft and you look at the stern tube, the distance between the stern tube and the propeller hub, it's excessive, right? Typically the length between the propeller and the stern tube, the generally accepted distance between them is probably going to be about one shaft diameter, 1.5 at the most. In this particular instance, the shaft is it's 1.25 inches in diameter, while the distance between the propeller and the stern tube is over 4 inches. So how did we get here? What's causing this? Well, the owner, after I pointed it out to him, said, well, I bought this shaft. I got a good deal on it. It was a little longer, and I didn't think it would be a problem. So he used it and he put it in, and this is what we have. But wait, there's more, and it gets even better. When he was installing this, if you take a look at it, he cut the stern tube. He cut about it's probably about a half an inch, 3/4 inch off the end of the stern tube. But when he put the cutlass bearing in there and he tightened it with the Allen screws or set screws to the right-hand side, he had probably the half inch of cutlass bearing sticking out. So he just put the cutoff part of the stern tube onto the cutlass bearing and tightened it down with that one, set screw. It's not doing anything. It's just sitting there on the cutlass bearing, which means that it's certainly not providing any additional support. So that's another issue with this installation that should be addressed. So here's a photo that proves that, boaters, they're funny people. They can do some funny stuff, and they can justify doing it in their own mind, particularly when it's an easy solution to a potentially, pain in the butt problem. Well, this is nothing really major here. You got a typical leaky stuffing box, and the owner has, it's leaking, it's putting water in his bilge, he don't like it. So what we do is we put a aluminum pan underneath it, and you know what? It'll fill up with water, and we're getting so lazy, right? We don't even want to have to empty it as often as we should. So we're going to put a big sponge in there, which will increase our distance or time between emptying the pans. So rather than just pulling the boat and repacking the stuffing box, this is the dance we're doing to try to avoid doing what should be done. This is our solution right here. And as you can see by the corrosion and the salt buildup on the shaft and the verdigris on the stuffing box, this is not something that's just been happening a couple of weeks. It's been that way for years. And redneck ingenuity aside, you got a boat that's constantly leaking, that could lead to sinking as well, right? The water comes in, the bilge pump fails, battery dies, whatever, and next thing you know, your boat's sunk. So the recommendation here, of course, is clear the shaft and the stuffing box of salt and corrosion and crud, and you know what? Pull the boat, repack the stuffing box, and make what ought to be what is. Okay, so what we're looking at here is a water heater. Remember, it's not a hot water heater because if the water was hot, it wouldn't need to be heated, right? So we're looking at the the overpressure relief valve that is plumbed to a through-hole fitting above the waterline on this vessel. ABYC standards call for the water heater relief valve to be plumbed either into the bilge or in this case overboard for the protection of personnel and equipment around the water heater. In the event this thing pops open and sprays scalding hot water around in the vicinity of the pressure valve. It also protects the water heater case from corrosion should a minor valve leak occur. So per ABYC standards, you can plumb this thing either directly overboard, which is what we got here, or you can plumb it into the bilge. But if it's plumbed into the bilge, the vessel has to have a high water bilge alarm installed. And the reason behind this is because if you're connected to city water or dock water, and this valve pops open, and it could flood the boat. If you don't have have it plumbed overboard, and if it's running into the bilge, it could fill the boat up. That's why they want you to have a high water bilge alarm. Ideally, one that's loud enough to be heard by passersby or marina personnel if the boat is unattended. And this, of course, highlights the reason that you should never leave your boat unattended while you're connected to the dock water and the dock water is turned on. So back to the picture. There's a couple of things I don't like about this installation. One, the hose that he's used to plumb the overpressure relief valve to the through-hole fitting is just plain old heater hose. What should be used is a marine grade hose suitable for use on a through-hole fitting. And the second thing that's not good about this installation is that if you'll take a look, you'll notice that the through-hole fitting which is probably about 5 or 6 inches above the waterline, it is higher than the overpressure relief valve that it's plumbed to. What that means is water that enters that through hole, which it's going to do as the boat's rocking or underway, that water's going to fill up that hose, and then it's going to be resting on the overpressure relief valve itself. So, and that hose was full of water. It's full of salt water. So that's going to promote corrosion and early failure of this overpressure relief valve. Okay, so what we're looking at here is a LPG system, LPG gas system for a stove aboard a mid-sized sailboat. And the owner has used 2 sections of hose here, and he's joined it with a fitting, and he's using hose clamps per ABYC standards and recommendations. ABYC, of course, being American Boat and Yacht Council. They require that the flexible LPG hoses be equipped with permanently attached end fittings, such as a suede sleeve or a sleeve and a threaded insert. So the rule is no hose clamp fittings on your propane system for obvious reasons. It could leak and cause an explosion or whatever. So here we're looking at an engine compartment on a mid-sized powerboat. You would think, just looking at this, that the boat's it's sunk or it's in the water and it's slipped and sunk. But that's not the case. This boat is actually resting on a road trailer in a broker's storage yard or storage lot. And what happened is they forgot to take the drain plug out of the boat, and over a course of probably 7 or 8 months, this thing slowly filled up with rainwater. It had bilge pumps with automatic float switches on, and they were tied to the batteries. However, the batteries eventually died and the bilge pump stopped working, and then the boat just slowly filled up with water until it eventually covered the engine. Now, you would look at this and say, man, you know what, this is pretty bad. You know, how could it get any worse? Well, I'll show you how it could get worse. This is a boat that was in a similar situation in that it was on a lift and the drain plug was not removed, and the owner failed to check it regularly. So what happened is the boat, again, rainwater filled up the boat, but this time it was over the winter and it froze. So you can see the engines are not only, you know, surrounded by water, now they're surrounded by ice and they're froze. So this is how it could get worse. So the moral of the story is, one, you know, remove your drain plugs when you've got the boat stored out of the water, but even more importantly, check it occasionally to make sure everything's okay. Okay, so we're going to put you in the surveyor's shoes here, and you've just stepped down into this compartment here, and this is what you see. Everything, you know, you're looking at it, man, not too bad, everything looks okay, but, you know, I can tell you there are a number of horrors, a plethora of horrors, if you get my Three Amigos reference there. Best scene in the whole movie, by the way. So let's take a look and go through the things that are wrong in this photo. First up, let's look at the battery installation. It's strapped in place, so it's secured, and it's in a tray. That's fine. But if you look at the positive terminal, it is not covered with a non-conductive material. If it was in a battery box, the battery box would serve the purpose of preventing accidental shorting of that. But there's no battery box and no battery box lid, so you've got an exposed positive terminal there. And if you look to in the middle of the battery, well, there's a chisel, right? A metal chisel there. Well, let's play the doomsday scenario. What if this chisel slid over and it connected the positive and negative terminal? Then you've got a lot of arcing and sparking going on. And if you look to the right of that, you've got a portable gasoline can full of gas. So arcing, sparking, hot metal slag flying around. You get the idea, right? The potential for an explosion. So just to summarize so far, the positive terminal on the battery should be covered. The chisel should be removed to prevent accidental shorting. The fuel can should be removed and stowed up topside in a proper area. Let's take another look. What else we got going on here? Above the battery, you've got a fuel line that's going to a filter, and I think that's going to a generator there. So you've got the positive conductor for the battery wire tied to this gray fuel line. That's another no-no, right? Can't have, you know, electricity and stuff wire tied to the fuel line. And if you look to the left of that, you'll see you've got the negative conductor for the battery. It comes up, and then it's cocooned in a wad of electrical tape. So it's a black wire coming up. but miraculously or horrifically more appropriate, when it comes out of that cocoon of electrical tape, it's now a red wire. So you can see the problem here. You're using a red wire for a negative wire. The chance of miscrossing these wires and connecting a positive to negative, negative to positive is greatly enhanced by mixing these colors of the conductors. And let's see what else we got here. Looking up at the very top above the cocoon of electrical tape, you see a pipe coming through. That's actually a through hole section there. It's been cut off, and that little glimmer of light in the top left of that tube is actually the outside. So you have an open through hole here that's been taken apart. It's been cut off, but it's not capped or properly secured, so that could allow water to enter into the boat. So I hope you enjoyed the Welcome to My World photo / visit of what I see every day when I'm crawling around these things. You know what I like about boats? Just when you think you've seen it all and you've seen everything and there's nothing else that can come up that's new, boat owners, they just dig down deep and they come up, bring up a new MacGyverism that just makes you shake your head and say, man, you know what? Obviously, I haven't seen everything. So what we got here is an unused through-hole seacock below the waterline. This is where a owner has removed a generator, and this is the raw water intake for the generator. So rather than do the proper thing, he removed the hose and capped the seacock with a bronze plug. He's left the hose in place, and it took me a minute to figure out what this was. I thought it was some kind of new fancy thing because I could see at the top there was kind of like a little ruby looking red plastic deal, and I'm thinking, what the heck is this? After about 5 seconds, I realized what it is. It's a screwdriver. The guy stuck a screwdriver in the hose, jammed it in there, and then he's held it in place with a stainless steel hose clamp. But, belt and suspenders here. So he took the green wire. That green wire is supposed to hold the hose up just in case it was to start leaking or whatever. So it's holding it up, trying to get it above waterline. So the recommendation here, of course, is if you're not going to use that through hole and that hose, take the hose off at the seacock. It's a bronze seacock, and just cap it with a marine grade bronze plug and be done with it. And if you're not going to use this seacock from here on out, even better would be the next time you haul it out, remove the through hole and seacock and glass it in. So here we have a situation on a workboat, aluminum workboat, and the owner wanted some additional fuel capacity on board. So rather than go, through the rigmarole and hoop-de-doo of installing, a proper fuel tank, what he did is he got this portable aluminum fuel tank. Actually, I'm not sure, but I believe it might even be something where you put into the back of a pickup truck. So anyway, he stuck this thing in there, and it's not, connected to the vessel's fuel system, to the fuel supply to the engines and generator. What he does is he uses a hand pump to transfer fuel from this to the vessel's fuel tank. And I'll add and clarify here that we're talking a diesel fuel tank on a diesel vessel. And while there's a number of issues with how he did this, I mean, having it, grounded to the vessel and so on and so forth. But the thing I wanted to point out in this video was that it's not properly secured and mounted. What he's got is he's got a yellow strap, a cargo strap there, a ratchet style, and he's just got it stuck in there and just kind of ratcheted down. But the thing, I could move it probably a half a foot, fore and aft, and then even more, athwartships or side to side. In fact, the fuel tank itself moved enough that it would come in contact with the battery that you can see located forward of it to the left-hand side there. So, for the purpose of this video, the recommendation is if you're going to do this, you got to mount it and secure it properly and follow all of the, the recommendations and standards for a fuel tank. You can't just, drop a spare tank in there and call it good and then go from there. And if you want to see some other issues with this installation regarding the battery and the fuel tank, the portable fuel tank, look at the last episode of the Sea Chest of Horrors, and I cover those in detail as well. So here we've got a situation where an owner installed a new engine, and when he got the new engine installed, he didn't have the access required to, remove and install oil filter. So what he did to solve this is he just took a sawzall, or a portable saw, and he just notched out the stringer so that he could remove and install the oil filter. Well, that stringer, that's the engine bed. I mean, that's what is providing the support for the engine. So he's notched it out, and you can't really tell it here, but it's down halfway of the stringer that the engine is mounted on. So he's effectively reduced the strength of the stringer, which again, the engine is mounted on, by half. And to add insult to injury, he just left the raw wood open. So now moisture and water can get inside the stringer, the wood inside the stringer, and start deteriorating and rotting it and reducing the strength of it even more. So here we're aboard a gasoline-powered vessel, an older, mid-sized trawler type vessel, and two big old Crusader engines. And we're looking at the engine compartment. And anytime you have a gasoline-powered vessel, one of the key things you're looking at is prevention of an explosion, a possible explosion, gasoline vapors, fumes, and the like. Along those lines, we're looking at the equipment installed on the bulkhead forward here, and you see the battery chargers. There's a couple of battery chargers here. But what really draws our attention here is this DC to AC inverter. Unlike the battery chargers to the left of it, this inverter is not ignition protected. Nowhere on there does it say it's ignition protected, and I know most of them, I've never seen one that I'm aware of, that is ignition protected. And what I mean by ignition protected, of course, is that it will not generate a spark. It won't arc and spark during operation. So you can't have a piece of equipment inside the engine compartment of a gasoline-powered vessel. And of course, I'm talking about equipment that could create a spark, battery chargers, inverters, water heaters, anything electrical, or alternators too, right? That's why you don't just go down to the auto parts store and get you an alternator to replace your marine grade unit if it goes bad. It has to be a marine grade unit, and the marine grade units, of course, are ignition protected. So the recommendation here is to remove this inverter out of the engine compartment and install it somewhere where it's not in an area where you could have gaseous fumes or vapors accumulate, like the engine compartment or the fuel tank space or anything like that. Again, the primary concern here is to prevent an explosion. If you have gasoline vapors present, you do not want a piece of gear in the engine compartment or fuel tank area of a gasoline-powered vessel that could generate an arc and spark and ignite and cause an explosion. As an aside, other things to look at for this installation for an inverter: one, it's got to have a shut-off or a battery cut-off switch, some way to secure DC power to the inverter in case it has a problem. If the inverter starts to smoke, you got to have some way to secure the power to it. Another thing to look for, if you look at the top left up there on this inverter, there's a little stud there. That's the ground stud. In other words, that's the ground for the chassis and stuff. The chassis of this inverter should be grounded with a wire that is the same size or diameter as the positive DC wire providing power to it. And while we're looking at that positive DC power feed to the inverter, if you follow that, you'll look and you'll see that it is actually going up into the battery charger. He's connected it to the output stud of the battery charger. In other words, that's good to the battery. That's the output to the battery. So what he should do is remove it there and connect it directly to the battery itself. And of course, when he relocates this inverter outside of the engine compartment, that's also the perfect time. While he's, moving the connection directly to the battery, that's the perfect time to install the battery cutoff switch we mentioned earlier. So as I've commented many times before, a lot of times, shaking my head, boaters are probably the most creative group of people collectively that there is in this world. If you put 20 boaters on a conference, to solve some of the problems of the world, like maybe, world peace or, food shortages, they'd come up with a solution. Although for the food shortage, it'd probably be something like soil it green. Yeah, hey, look it up. So what we're looking at here is this is a ventilation system for the engine compartment of a gasoline-powered vessel. So the ducting you see coming down into the space, that is part of the ventilation system. It's actually the intake which provides, fresh air, introduces fresh air from the outside into the space or the engine compartment. The problem is the owner noticed at some point, we're getting some water in our, drain, getting water from our ventilation system outside, and it's draining down the side of the hull, and we don't like that. So what they did was they made like a cone, a funnel-shaped deal with some plastic, and you can trace it down. You'll see at the bottom it's taped to a hose, and this hose runs down to the bilge. Well, problem solved. The problem is the ventilation, the intake or the discharge for the duct work, if it's positioned like it's normally would be there, it's inside that funnel. So all it's doing, it's not bringing any, ventilation into the engine room. It's just running into this funnel and then shoving it down. So of course, gasoline powered engine, explosions, fumes, stuff like that. The ventilation system has to be, spot on. And by that, I mean it has to follow the guidelines, federal guidelines for gasoline-powered vessels. For one, the air intake ductwork has to extend and be permanently secured to a point at least midway to the bilge or below the carburetor of the engine. And the exhaust ductwork has to be permanently secured in the lower 1/3 of the engine compartment, or as nearly as practical below the engine. And of course, the insulation for the ducting has to be self-draining in the event water enters the ducting. Well, that's kind of what we're dealing with here, but we've addressed it in a way that is unsafe. So the recommendation here, of course, remove the funnel here and let nature and natural ventilation take its course. So here we're looking at a air conditioning, the raw water intake system for an air conditioning. We've got a through hull on the left, and then it's coming up to a bronze strainer. And then on the right-hand side of the strainer is the air condition, the system pump for the cooling water for the system. So we've got a couple of issues here going on. One, if you look at the elbow or the tailpipe there on the left-hand side of the strainer, that's just a plain old PVC elbow, a piece of PVC that you could pick up at any of the big box stores, Home Depot, Lowe's, whatever. It's just a plain old piece of PVC pipe. Composite, and by composite I mean PVC, plastic, any kind of fittings, to metal fittings or joints are not recommended, particularly where seacocks and through holes below the waterline and stuff are concerned. PVC shouldn't be in the mix regardless. PVC should never be used in your systems below the waterline. Anyway, metal and composite components have different expansion and contraction ratios, which can result in the composite component cracking and failing or splitting, due to these different expansion and contraction ratios. Continuing along that theme, if you look on the right side there where the strainer is attached to the raw water pump for the air conditioning system, you've got a bronze fitting, and it is the raw water pump for the air conditioning unit, which is plastic, is screwed right onto that fitting. So there's another, composite to metal fitting that you have that should be addressed. And in conjunction with that, the next problem that we'll look at is the strainer itself is not mounted. So you've got the hose coming up from the through hull. You got that 90-degree PVC piece of plastic. Then you got the strainer, and then you got the raw water pump on the other side. That's what's providing support for the strainer. Well, the problem with that is, if the strainer is not properly supported, it's not bolted in place, then it's just kind of flopping around. It's full of water, it's fairly heavy, and it's bronze, heavy to boot. So it's kind of flopping around, and it acts as a lever. It could actually crack either the the plastic housing for the AC raw water pump that it's screwed into, or that, PVC elbow on the left side. Either of which could result in, water entering the boat and sinking it. So the solution for all these dilemmas is, one, replace the elbow on the left with a bronze fitting or a bronze tailpipe, which is where the hose would connect from the seacock. The next thing, you'd want to properly mount that strainer on a bulkhead or appropriate support member or structure of the boat, and then plumb it using a hose from the strainer to the air conditioner and raw water pump. So here we've got a situation where the owner decided that he wanted to install a transom drain plug so he could drain the boat at the winter when he stored it and stuff. So he drilled the hole and mounted the drain plug. You can see out here, there's the housing. The problem is when you look on the inside, you'll see that, he drilled through the transom, which is cord construction, but he didn't seal the coring. He didn't seal it, the hole that he drilled in there to prevent moisture intrusion into the coring of the transom. So when we're talking about cord construction just means something is sandwiched between two layers of fiberglass. It could be, ingrain balsa, or in this case for a transom, it's typically going to be plywood. It could also be, in some cases for decks and stuff, foam, coring. It's whatever they decide to use. The reason the manufacturer uses cord construction is because they say, well, an inch panel of cord material is stronger than a solid inch piece of fiberglass. And the reason for that is due to the I-beam effect and stuff. And that's correct. But the real reason they do it is because it's cheaper to build that way. So cord construction for the transom, again, you're going to have typically marine grade plywood sandwiched between two layers of fiberglass. Any penetration into the coring, such as this drain plug install here, is a possible point of moisture entry into the coring. So if you get moisture into the wood or the plywood, whatever is used, then you start to have deterioration issues, particularly with ingrain balsa, marine plywood and stuff. Deterioration issues, loss of structural integrity. As the core rots, of course, it's not going to be, you're not going to have the structural integrity that you would have, before it got wet. So anytime you drill through a panel that is cord construction, you have to make sure that when you drill it, you seal the core material so that moisture doesn't have an opportunity to get into the core and start causing trouble. So the recommendation here would be, of course, pull this back out, properly seal the coring of the transom, and then place it back and caulk it good so that you don't have any moisture intrusion issues. So here we're looking at the propane system for the stove, and it's on a mid-sized powerboat, trawler style boat. So there are a number of issues with this installation. It is actually located up in the flying bridge helm console. So there's a number of issues with ventilation, proper locker, etc., etc., etc. However, what we're going to focus on now, or for this item, is the use of a vertical tank, and it's placed in a horizontal position. So there's a number of problems with using a vertical tank in a horizontal position. One of these is that when the tank, again, a vertical tank used in a horizontal position, is that the tank could send liquid propane rather than the vapor to the stove. This can result in freezing the stove and inline valves, including the solenoid valve, in the open position, rendering them inoperative, and possibly leading to a catastrophic sequence of events such as a fire or explosion. LPG tanks, liquid propane gas tanks that are designed and plumbed for horizontal use have mounting feet welded to their sides, and the internal valve has a bent tube to allow withdrawal from the vapor space only, which prevents liquid propane from entering the system. Using a vertical tank in a horizontal position on a cold day before the liquid propane gas in the hose could vaporize, you may just get liquid LPG at the burner, and you get a 2-foot flame instead of a 2-inch flame that you're expecting. This is also possible on a warmer day due to the hobby horsing of the boat. a typical sign that the tank is in the wrong position. You know, at the flame of the burner, you may have minuscule flickering, and this is basically LPG liquid droplets igniting in the flame. And the hose, of course, would be cold and sweating. Again, this is all due to liquid propane gas entering into the hose, into the stove and system itself, rather than vapor as you want to have. Propane, you know, liquid propane gas, these systems, these are one of the few systems on board that can actually blow you up, you know. So there's a lot of recommendations and requirements you have to meet for these systems. So the big takeaway here is, you know, if you've got work to do on your propane system or it needs work, unless you want to be ushered into eternity via a, you know, fiery ball, the best thing to do is to have a professional do the work and installation rather than try to MacGyver it yourself. You ever heard the phrase, the road to hell is paved with good intentions? Here we've got a situation where an owner is trying to do the right thing, but he doesn't have the knowledge to make sure that it's done correctly. I mean, he's given it the old school try, but it's just not correct. So what we've got here is you have an owner of a power boat, and the box to the left there is the engine compartment. And the owner knows that, you know what, you should have something in place so that if you have a fire in the engine compartment, you don't have to open up the hatch to see what's going on, because if you do so, that can lead to a smoldering fire. You know, it gets a rush of oxygen when you open the hatch and could lead to a conflagration. So he knows he's supposed to do that. He knows that he's supposed to have a fire port, which is the little black circle there, if he doesn't have a fixed extinguisher located in the engine compartment. The fire port is simply a hole that allows you to discharge a fire extinguisher into the engine compartment, you know, to hopefully, you know, extinguish the fire without opening up the hatch and giving it the fire that rush of oxygen. The problem is, well, it's a kind of a couple of problems. One, the type of extinguisher he's got installed here is a dry chem extinguisher. It's a dry chem unit. For this to be effective, you have to aim the fire extinguisher at the base of the flame while you discharge it, and that's how you fight the fire. Even though he's installed a little hose from the fire extinguisher nozzle into the engine compartment through the fire port, you know, I guess his theory was it's going to direct the dry chem unit, the dry chem powder, into the engine compartment and somehow put out the flame. Well, it's not going to do that, because you're not able to direct the dry chem into the engine compartment, aim it at the base of the flame. You're just not going to be able to do it. The proper way, or what you want to have to fight an engine compartment fire, is a gaseous clean agent unit. Now, the clean agent unit, you know, when it goes off, either you discharge a portable unit into the fire port, or if you have an automatic extinguisher that is mounted inside the engine compartment, it essentially envelops the engine. It fills the compartment with the gaseous fire extinguishing agent, clean agent, and that's how it puts out the fire. So you do not have to aim it at the base of the flame. You just discharge it in there, and it floods the compartment with the extinguishing agent. The other benefit of this type of extinguisher is that it does not leave any residue, a powdery residue on the engine. This powdery residue from a dry chem unit is extremely corrosive, and if you spray down your engine with it, then, you know, it's going to corrode badly. It's going to eat it up. It probably even do more damage than a smoldering or small scale fire. So that's another reason you don't want to use this dry chem stuff. So what he's done, he's mounted his dry chem unit there. He's used a section of hose to connect the nozzle into the engine compartment, and he's just got that set right there so that if he had a fire in the engine compartment, he would just pull the pin and squeeze the trigger, and, you know, the extinguishing agent, the dry chem stuff, would just be shooting into the engine compartment. But again, as we've discussed, this is not going to be an efficient or an effective way to fight the fire. For more information on the do's and don'ts of engine compartment fires, please check out my other YouTube video, How to Handle an Engine Compartment Fire. So here we're looking at the hatch of a mid-sized sailboat. You got a hatch, it's got a nice canvas cover. You you got something stuck in there. It looks like maybe a marine grade air conditioner or something. But looking at it closer, we see that it is anything but marine grade or safe. A quick tug of the canvas, and this is what we've got. We got a hatch that's propped open with a piece of wood, and we've got a small residential style air conditioning unit stuck in there, and they've shaped the the end of it there with foam, and they've taped it and shaped it with foam and duct tape to present that aerodynamic form that we were looking at earlier. So the problems with this one, of course, is that the air conditioning unit is just resting in there in the hatch. It's not secured in any fashion. Number two, the power cord for this air conditioning unit is that yellow drop cord right there. So the AC power cord for this unit it's hot wired over to the left there, and then it goes down. It's fed into this deck hatch under the canvas there, and then it goes down into the boat. Well, the boat has no permanently installed AC power system on board, so the owner has Frankensteined a system where he just ran a power cord from the dock onto the boat, and then he has from that he's got like a million power strips going all over the boat, which he's using to provide AC power to the various spaces. So of course the recommendation here is to remove this residential style window unit air conditioning, replace it with a if you want an in-hatch air conditioning, replace it with a marine grade unit, and certainly have the power system installed properly, particularly the AC power coming onto the boat itself, rather than this abomination that he's got providing power to it now. So here we have an example of things, this is something I see all the time. Somebody's got to run a wire from point A to point B, and they don't quite know how to do it. So they just kind of, run something like this right here. What you're looking at is the hawse hole for an anchor on a sailboat. And what they've done is they had to run some navigation lights, bow lights, up to the bow pulpit. And they just ran the wire, from the inside of the boat through the anchor hawse hole, and then wire tied it up to the running lights. Of course, you can see when you run the wires like this, you've got a wire run that goes through the hawse hole, it's going to get, be subjected to chafe and damage and stuff from the anchor chain and stuff like that. It's just a very, a rednecky, unprofessional way to do it. Anytime you do a wire run, you got to plan it out and make sure the wire run's properly supported. 18 inches, every 18 inches got a wire support, a tie. And you have to make sure that it's protected. If you take a look at this picture, they ran some control cables and power cables and stuff from a pedestal steering system on a sailboat, and they just ran it down the the tube where the chain, you can see the chain for the steering system is located. And of course, understandable and expected result really, if you don't separate and protect them. You can see here where the chain and the gear has just chewed the wire run up. So when you have to run wiring, power, control, whatever, do so in a manner that it is well supported and it's protected against damage. So I find a lot of bad things on boats. There ain't no doubt about it. I look at a lot of boats and I find a lot of bad things. But the things that I find that bother me the most are not the things that deal with, standards like, okay, you didn't support this wire run, or you used the wrong type of, grommet, or didn't cover the positive battery terminal, stuff like that. It's bad enough, but the things that really bother me are the things that can, blow you up or kill you. And this would be a prime example of something that can kill you. And I guess the reason it bothers me so bad is because people do things like this and they just don't think anything of it. It's just A-okay. Case in point here, what we're looking at is the forward head compartment for a trawler, a mid-sized trawler. It's got two cabins. It's got an aft cabin. It's got a forward cabin. Both of them have bathrooms. So we're looking at the head here, and the owner has placed a portable generator in here. So the reason that he did this, the logic behind it, as they take, step by step, they think of this, what they think of as a logical process, and it all kind of seems makes sense to them. So the way this generator wound up in the forward head compartment was the boat had a regular generator on it, a properly installed marine grade generator, and it crapped out on them. And marine generators are expensive. It costs a lot of money to fix them when they crap out, or you got to replace them or whatever. But you can go down there to the the Home Depot or Harbor Freight or somewhere. You can buy these cheap little gasoline generators for a couple of $100. The allure is very great. Because it's cheap, it's easy. I buy one of these things, stick it in there, and me and Ethel's got power. We don't even have to replace that generator. Well, the problem is when you put this portable gasoline generator on your boat, the big concern, one of them is carbon monoxide poisoning. There's a number of reasons why you shouldn't use these generators on board. It deals with the way they're not properly installed, carbon monoxide poisoning, the dangers associated with trying to fill the gas tank on a portable generator when it's hot, things like that. But let's kind of focus on what we've got here. So he's installed that in the forward head compartment. Me and Ethel, we don't never go in there. We don't use it. So I'm going to just put this generator in here, and I'm going to run the power cord from the generator, out to the boat, and then tie it into the system. We backfeed it into the system, and everything just be all right. Well, so I asked him. I said, "Well, you're running that," and he's running that generator inside the head compartment. I said, "You ever heard of carbon monoxide? People die from that stuff all the time. And he said, "Yeah, I'm aware of that, and that's why I take all my precautions." I said, "Your precautions?" He said, "Yeah. If I run this generator, I'll turn it on, and before I turn it on, before I crank it up, I open up the porthole there above the head. The sink there. There's a porthole there. I open up that porthole, and I am always sure that I shut that bathroom door so we don't get none of that carbon monoxide inside the boat." I said, "Dude, you're killing me, man. And you're trying to kill yourself. That's a gas that'll come through there." And it just kind of astounded him. Actually, he got a little, ticked off when I told him, that's unsafe and you're probably going to kill yourself. I said, "Would you, if you had a garage, had your car in your garage at home, would you shut the garage door and run the car while you was in there?" He said, "Well, no, that'd be crazy." I said, "Well, okay, let's look at it right here. Is it any different?" "Well, no, I don't guess it is." I said, "All right, let me tell you, if you, one weekend you're going to be using your generator like this to power your air conditioning, the next week your family's going to be fighting over your Dale Earnhardt collectibles and your Elvis records." So I guess the moral of the story is, don't try to take any shortcuts, particularly with safety. If you've got a generator that goes out, replace it or repair it. Don't install one of these portable gasoline generators inside your boat or even outside your boat. Because I get that logic a lot too, right? Yeah, we got this portable generator, but we put it on the flying bridge or on the stern or the bow. We put it on the outside, so the wind can blow it away. I said, "Yeah, but what about, if the wind turns around and shifts or if the wind dies, the carbon monoxide can still find its way into the boat." So the best course of action is just don't do it. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if so, and you want to buy Capt Frank a cup of coffee, please click on the thanks button below this video. All tips received, not spent on coffee, will be used to improve my YouTube channel and create even more awesome videos.